So there have been some new modules added in the last update and it's time to check them out. Now, after this video I will be checking out the new implant that's available now, and I'm very curious to see how much hit points is that implant going to actually give to my ships. I will be testing it out on something very interesting, on something very tanky. But today we'll be focusing on the two new modules that have been added, and I also noticed that all the carriers seem to have received +1 medium slot, and I also noticed that they are now missing the sensor mode, which I believe is completely gone now. So the two new modules in question, one is for the force auxiliary, one should be universal for all the carriers, but I've actually noticed that you cannot fit the network sensor tactical module on the Lucent-Moon, but the logistic support module does work. Now the sensor mode does increase your sensor resolution and sensor strength. It also does give you 100 points, so while this is active you are unable to warp out. So, but the good thing is the cycle time isn't long, and does have a remote repair effect, 25%. Now I'm not really sure what that effect means. Maybe it enhances the remote repair, maybe it reduces the remote repair. I would actually think that it reduces the remote repair, but you are unable to fit this module onto the Lucent-Moon, unfortunately. Since this is a combat force auxiliary, this is a very unique ship in the game, and if you think that you were able to fit the red module, well, unfortunately you can't. But the other logistic module does seem to fit just fine, and that's honestly kind of weird and funny. After all, this force logistic is also a combat ship. It can be a carrier and a force logistic at the same time, and it can also be a versatile assault ship. So this is honestly a very odd ship, but yeah, you are only able to fit the logistics support module, which does have some very interesting buffs to remote repair. Could be very useful for other logistic ships as well. It should not be bound only to the Lucent-Moon. It says all the force auxiliaries should be able to fit this, so we did get a nice new tactical module for the capital Logis. Now this thing overall does seem to be about the same. I know it's been buffed, and I've told you that they will buff this thing in one of the last videos that I made for the Lucent-Moon. But the biggest change I noticed is that extra medium slot. So that's a very nice little change, I would say. 5 medium slots on the Lucent-Moon are decent. So, since obviously I am not going to be able to utilize this module with a DPS combat build, this means that I'll have to change the build into a Logi. Now this thing, as I already mentioned in the previous videos and in this video, it can be used as a versatile assault ship, it can be used as a classic carrier with fighters, it can be even used as a drone boat with drones. So you really have a lot of options to go with. I personally prefer lightweight ships on this thing, primarily because I just seem to find lightweight ships to work better than the fighters. And when I say better, that's purely from my personal perspective, after testing them out. If you don't have skills for lightweight ships, you're free to use fighters. In the end, I would say it doesn't really make much of a difference. It really makes a difference if you have skills, of course, but if you have fighters, use fighters. If you have lightweight ships, use lightweight ships. If you want to use it as a Logi, use it as a Logi. Again, a multi-purpose ship, you can fly it in whatever way you want to fly. Now, time to assemble a Logi build. However, I would say that this ship is primarily used as a combat ship instead of a Logi, at least from my personal experience. I've seen a bunch of these ships in nullsec to be used as a PvE ship, combat ship with lightweight ships and with drones simultaneously, since I have access to a lot of different, I have intel all over the place, so I kind of know where the ships are lurking and what they're being used. I know there are some Logis, but at the moment there's just a lot more combat Lucent-Moons than there are Logi Lucent-Moons, at least from my sources. I could be wrong, there might be some I don't know, loggy Lucent fleet somewhere hidden. Could be possible, but from what I've seen, primarily they're used as combat ships. And honestly, it kind of does suck that you are unable to fit the red module. However, I will say one thing though. I tested this with the... And now I actually remember what I was doing with the video here. I tried to fit the module with the versatile assault ship mode, with the special hangar modification, and maybe if you fit for the classic fighters, maybe you were able to fit the red module. Maybe I'll edit that part in after I finish editing the video later on, since that's one thing I did not test. I forgot to do that, but if I noticed any change, I'll definitely add it in the video at one point, or I just put a text somewhere that it works, or if it doesn't work. But the logi build here is slowly finishing up. Now I prefer a passive logi build, since you want to have your capacitor primarily for remote repair. After all, if you have the remote repair implant, it will definitely be very capacitor heavy, especially when you are using the implant. However, it does repair a lot, and with capacitor batteries it should still be pretty decent. And for the integrations, I would actually say the integrations might be the way to go if you want a passive logi build, since there isn't much of a different way to get your resistances high enough so that you can tank a lot of hits passively. This thing also should have some good passive recovery, passive recharge on the shield, so that's also working for this thing in the favor of the passive tank. When we get the capital shield generators, I can almost guarantee you that passive tanking the super capitals and other capitals that have a bonus on passive recharge will be the way to go, since they might be very, very hard to break, even with the crazy DPS implants that we have at the moment. There's a good chance that those generators will quite literally change the landscape when it comes to the ship builds for the capitals. I mean, it already kind of can do that with the classic extenders if you have the general unit and a good build. The thing that I'll be doing in the next video with the Wyvern, I believe I'll fly the Eon as well, since they are kind of the two tanky ships that I have, so I think that's going to be very interesting. And good thing is I changed the special defense module into a shield one, since it's a passive shield tank in this case. And for the integrations, now I'll put the integrations that I have at my disposal here. I have a bunch of them, but I'll just use the ones that I usually do when I test things out. But if you do plan to fly this thing as a passive tank, for P60 with a focus on EM, thermal and kinetic, and the fourth rig for shield volume, and you can repeat that with the other two rigs. It should be the ideal resistance passive tank built for shield extenders, and you should get on average around 3 million average shield hit points, with an average of 90 to 95% shield resistance. With a good build and with some adaptives, you can get that up to about 95 average, which I would say is more than enough for logi purpose, for a passive tank. And if you are in a big fleet, then you definitely will have some, shield bubbles, you will have other logistics, and tanking will be quite easy, I would say. Now, let's see how this thing works when I turn on the module and when we undock with this monstrosity. See how the logi build works. I personally expect, I mean, you could see the numbers there, you can do the math, and basically based on the math you can actually get the repair, I guess. But let's just turn this thing on and let's see what I get on the drones and what I get on the remote shield boosters. I usually don't fly logis. I mean, I'm obviously not a part of a big fleet. I don't know if I'll ever be part of a big fleet again, or a big corporation or alliance. Probably not. But in case I do, I'll definitely have some ideas for what kind of ships I would fly if I decide to be a logi pilot, but highly unlikely. So we have 11.5 thousand remote shield boost. Okay, it's not bad, and 7.6 thousand with the maintenance drones, shield maintenance drones. Okay, not bad. So let's turn on the module and let's see what do we get when this is enabled. So on the remote booster, it's 17,000. Okay, that's decent. That's a decent buff, a decent increase. However, the drones seem to be the same, and I think this is bugged. I believe that it should give a bonus on drones. Let's see. Yeah, drone shield boost amount 50%. It should give a drone bonus, but it doesn't show. Could be just a display bug. I'm fairly sure it's just a display bug, since it obviously works for the remote repairs, but it doesn't display that for the drones. And with the implant engaged, 95,000 per booster. If you have C-types, maybe 120, 130,000 shield per cycle per booster, which should be enough to fully recover a shield on a dreadnought in a couple cycles, and can also definitely help to recover the shield on some super capitals, on carriers and ships like that. So definitely a decent little module, which works really well with a combination of the well, not exactly new, but works really well with the remote shield booster implant. Alright, so that was these were the loggy module, I guess. Now it will be time to check out the other module, which is for carriers. Again, very weird that you cannot fit that on a force auxiliary. I guess it's fine, but at the same time, the Lucent-Moon is not exactly a normal force auxiliary. It kind of is a combat carrier as well. So yeah, it's again a very weird ship in a very weird position. But thankfully, we have a CNC carrier here, and I noticed the CN got an extra medium slot as well. Alrighty then, that's interesting. And this is the network tactical module, and hopefully it will be able to be installed on the CNC. It should be able to be installed, and it works. There we go. So now the module installed, I can return the grappler on this thing, and then I'll just add some drones, some lightweight ships there. Well, lightweight ships. Obviously, you're not able to fit drones to lightweight ships. You're able to fit ordinary fighters. I'll use the offense fireballs because they are kind of the favorite drone type for a CNC carrier. I've seen these drones fighters everywhere, all over the place, in high sec and in low sec and in low sec. I mean, again, I have access to all sorts of intel, so yeah, I've seen a lot of different ships with a lot of different builds from all corporations and alliances out there. So yeah, but yeah, let's wait for this thing to load in. I am still kind of annoyed at the speed for the loading tube, I guess, but it is what it is. Used to be a lot worse, but I guess any improvement is kind of I guess good. And I'll just add one little new module. Well, not new module, but I'll just add one fighter array. I don't know why I have a macro warbrick there. I think actually I know, I was testing stuff out. Okay, well, let's add one fighter mode, and there we go. Classic CNC build right here in high sec. You can actually see this in some null sec systems as well. There are variations in the build, but this is what this thing looks like. Now 312 is the sensor. Okay, let's undock and let's see how much the new module does buff. Now I think the new module is here to replace the classic sensor mode. The classic sensor mode did have a big drawback. Basically 2 minutes of being unable to do anything in space. You were unable to warp, and if you click on the sensor mode at the wrong moment, you can get killed. You can get easily destroyed. So interesting change that has been made for the carriers in general. So let's turn this thing on. I also love how I have all sorts of fuel conducting modules installed. It's kind of getting annoying with how much fuel everything is starting to use. We will have a fuel shortage in the game very quickly. I can definitely tell you that much. So 312 millimeters, and let's turn this thing on, and let's see what do we get now after this new module is enabled. 21.9 thousand DPS, 130 6 millimeters in the sensor resolution, and the sensor strength 128. Okay, that's interesting. Well, 200 bonus, so that's to be expected, and a 25 bonus on the other thing, so okay, well, does seem to be interesting. Cycle time is also very quick, so now you can actually warp off on time, even if you turn the module on at the wrong moment. I guess this will improve the carrier's durability in low sec and in null sec. It should improve the durability greatly, since now you can actually react on time. But if you're still AFK, running AFK, then I guess even the new change is not going to, make a big difference, since AFK ships get destroyed very quickly. In any case, doesn't matter if it's a super capital carrier, classic carrier, versatile assault ship, battleship, doesn't matter. AFK ships get killed, get destroyed very, very quickly. So don't be surprised by that. You can change the ships, but you also have to kind of change the the behavior of what you're doing with the ship. And how does this reflect on combat use? Well, let's actually find out. Now, I honestly forgot. I think the CNC carrier did have a special module. Yes, it did have a special module. It was one of the very few carriers, faction carriers, that actually did retain the sensor mode, the networking mode, but now that's been removed. And I wouldn't say removed, I would say changed. It went from a special mode into a special combat tactical module. So I guess could be a decent change. We also did get a carrier module buff. They received one extra medium slot, so you can technically fly these ships without the network mode, but I would not really recommend to do that, because the lock-on time on smaller ships will definitely be long. So the module is definitely designed to be used with the carriers, but at the same time you also have the option not to use them. My recommendation is to use them, since it does have a very good bonus on the sensor and on the lock-on time. It does improve that a lot, but the overall, the CNC carrier performance seems to be still what it used to be. 21.9 thousand DPS, almost 22,000 DPS actually. I would say that's pretty good. I would say that's actually decent. If you have a CNC carrier with an nanocore, your DPS will probably be just a lot higher than what I have here. I'm using the aerospace tactic implant, the PvE implant that gives passive boost. The aerospace is good for PvE, the bombard is good for PvP. However, at the same time, you have to be careful, since the aerospace does have some disadvantages. And I have seen a lot of super capitals being torn to shreds by sub-capital fleets just because they had the aerospace tactic implant. But primarily, I wouldn't be blaming the implant. I would be blaming the way, the build that they have on their ship. Most of the destroyed super capitals and carriers don't really have a proper, low sec or null sec build. You can use a build like this in high sec, obviously. It's going to work, since in high sec there is no danger for PvP. But when you're in low sec and when you're in null sec, I really recommend that you change the build into something that has a good tank, since being able to clear stuff fast is nice and all, but your ship will be cleared very quickly as well by players. So you want to be able to, keep using the same ship for a longer period of time. So I definitely recommend a tank build for low sec and for null sec, but at the same time, if you want to use a glass build, I'm not going to prevent anyone from doing that. Your ship, your build, and well, if you get caught, well, I guess just be prepared to have a big loss smell. That's all that I'm going to say about that. But so far, I'm personally quite happy with how this module works so far. I'm mostly happy about the fact that there is no crazy 2-minute long timer that you have to wait in order to disable the module. Or you can just click on the module, and when the cycle finishes, you basically are free to warp. wasn't the case with the previous networking mode that was available on the carriers. Well, not all carriers did have the networking mode. The versatile solid chips received something different. They also have a natural pulse on the sensor, so they don't really need the networking mode, but I'll definitely be checking this module out on the versatile solid chips. Maybe unable to fit that on the versatile solid chips, we will see. Maybe this is just exclusive to carriers, to ordinary carriers, with the big exclusion of the versatile solid chips and the force auxiliaries. But again, I need to test that out in order to be 100% sure if that's the case or not. And well, let me clear one more little wave and then we can go and dock. After all, I still have to make the new video about the new defense implant. That actually, I will have to talk about that in the defense implant video, but it's kind of refreshing that it's not the thing that we have been all waiting for. That's a good thing, because I was worried. A lot of players have been worried that the implant is actually a solution to the DPS problem. Well, it's not. Okay, it's not. There's going to be more things that will be focusing on defense that are not a implant. So I'm glad that's the case. Was very worried that it wasn't, but thankfully it's good. So not going to be worrying much about that from this point. But so far, from my perspective, so far everything's been, well, most of the things recently have been okay, I guess. And so far, still looking forward for the huge ship change. I'm actually expecting that to have to happen like any moment now. Any week can be the week where they just completely rework the tech tree. We have already seen the reduction in some modules, or should I say the restriction reduction in some modules, where alpha cons are now able to use all the drones, alpha cons are now able to use all the cloaks, and we'll definitely see more of these restrictions being lifted as time goes on. That's a very pleasant, welcoming change that we have been waiting for a couple years now. Finally it's happening, so things are starting to be really good now, and I wasn't really expecting all that to happen, to be honest. I expected something completely different, but I'm actually glad that I was kind of I was proven wrong. I was proven wrong regarding how they will lift the restrictions, because I actually thought there was going to be new ships, new stuff, but they will lift the restriction on all their stuff, which is actually better than to add new stuff. So I'm all in for that. We'll see what's going to happen next. I also expect some skills to lose the restriction as well, which will allow for alpha cons to scale into a lot more ships to fly them properly. That's a very pleasant change, or they might even change the skills completely, so a lot of ships will just record the basic skills now, so that everyone can just skill and fly them properly. And again, that's also one of the things that I personally expect to happen at one point in the next, I don't know, 1 or 2 months, hopefully. But that was it for the 2 new modules here. Interesting modules for sure. Tell me what you think about the new modules. Are they good? Are they bad? What do you think about them? Very curious to see what players think. And well, with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed. If you would like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. And with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, as always. I'll see you next time.